Hello everyone, how's it going? And welcome to our first look at Wild Rift patch 4.1b. Sorry, this video is a little bit later than usual for these first look videos for the new patch. Normally this comes out at around 2 a.m. my time, but because I've been waking up so early at like 8 a.m. co-streaming the Wild Rift League Asia, then I had the Rift Legends EMEA tournament in the evening as well. I just haven't had the time to stay up and I just felt so tired, but I'm awake now. I'm ready to show you all this new patch, this new spicy patch as well. That's going to be coming out next week, also with the release of Twitch coming out very soon, so make sure you keep an eye on that one. There's a lot of interesting changes, and as always, if you enjoy the content, make sure you leave a like and subscribe to the channel. All the support is greatly appreciated. Right, let's start off things with the champion buffs. First buff we have is to Lee Sin. His base attack damage is going from 64 to 66. Now this doesn't seem like a crazy change, you know, going up by 2 AD doesn't really mean too much, but it does actually mean a little bit. It means that Lee Sin's early jungle clear is now going to be a little bit quicker, but also all of his abilities scale off attack damage as well, which means that his abilities are going to do more damage, his auto attacks are going to do more damage, so they're just giving him a little bit more early game power, which is kind of scary because Lee Sin is already a great early game champion. If you don't know already, you know, Lee Sin with the aggressive plays, with the flash kicks that you can do, the early trades that you can do in the laning in the early game as well, when trying to trade in terms of scuttle crabs, in terms of trying to get them early skirmishes. Lee Sin is one of the best champions for early game skirmishes and for clearing through the jungle. So this change is definitely an interesting one in my opinion. I don't know if I agree with it. I don't know if Lee Sin is actually underperforming or not. I think Lee Sin is in a pretty decent spot. And then another thing with Lee Sin as well is that in the higher elos, like if you go to like Grandmaster Challenger, Lee Sins are absolutely insane. But if you go in the lower elos like Silver, Gold, or somewhere like that, the Lee Sin mechanics are maybe not as great as the high. You know, Lee Sin is one of them champions. In the lower elos, he's never going to perform very well, but them high mechanical players in the higher elos are going to perform great with Lee Sin. So it's very hard to balance out Lee Sin depending on, you know, what tier you're trying to look at in general. The next one I don't really agree with. The next one is actually very scary. Vi's Vault Breaker being buffed, which is extremely scary. I think this is a really scary buff. I think Vi is already in a pretty decent spot. I guess she's not really a carry jungler in a way. She gets used a lot in the Wild Rift League Asia because of just her lockdown and how mobile she already is with her first ability. Now they're reducing her first ability cooldown by 2 seconds at every single rank. This means she can use this ability more often to maybe get over walls, to be mobile across the map, to try and go for more ganks. I think this is a very scary change. You normally want to max this ability first as well, but just because you can get the cooldown as low as possible, so you can just keep using this ability over and over again, whether you want to go in, whether you want to escape. As I said, maybe because Vi is not a carry champion in a way, that she maybe struggles in solo queue because she doesn't really do a lot of damage unless you go for like a crazy Trinity Force, Blade Rune King, Solari Charge Blade, like this crazy attack speed crit build. If you want to, you can try that out if you want to. But I think the build that I did a couple of days ago from the WRL is probably the best build to go. But again, it's not really a carry champion in a way. But again, I think very scary buff. I think the Vi is already in a pretty decent spot. This buff is just going to make her even stronger, to be honest with you. As in Xiao, again, they're just buffing his AD from 58 to 62. Again, a nice early game buff for Xin Xiao will help him a lot in the early game, will help him a lot in terms of being able to try and, you know, clear through the jungle, try and get that level 5 as quick as possible, and then look to try and gank afterwards. And also the third ability cooldown go from 12 seconds to 11 seconds. Obviously this cooldown doesn't go down every single time you level up your third ability. You just get like a little bit of extra attack speed, which is why normally you want to go for your second ability where you max first with Xin Xiao, because you get the cooldown with your second ability, and also just the damage overall goes up with your second ability. But the cooldown third ability going down by you know, 1 second is not really a big change. I think the big change is definitely the base attack damage going up by 4. So it means that you have a more early game pressure. You can wave clear the jungle quicker. I keep saying wave clear for some reason. You know what I mean. Clear through the jungle quicker because you have more base AD in the early game. You can deal more damage to the jungle, and you can just try and get to level 5 as quick as possible. So nice changes to Xin Zhao. I wanted to do a Xin Zhao video as well, so I guess it's the perfect time to do a Xin Zhao video because the Xin Zhao build is very similar to the Vi build with Trinity Force, Warmog, Sterox Gauge, items like that. So I think it's quite interesting. Trendamir, Trendamir is the champion, I guess. Not really, to be honest with you. base attack damage going up from 52 to 54, whip-de-doo. I mean, it doesn't really mean too much. And then the first ability, the health that you get when you use your first ability, even though it says health regeneration, this is when you use your first ability. So when you're stacking up your fury, when you use your first ability, you get a base amount of health back. It used to be 40, 50, 60, 70. Now it's 55, 65, 75, 85. Pretty good for him during the early game, especially during the laning phase as well. I think this will help him out a lot because you always want to try and go in for trades, try and stack up your fury, and then you can use your first ability to stay healed during the laning phase, and then means you can stay in the laning phase for longer, farm up a bit longer, and maybe go for more aggressive trades, because maybe you'll win the trade, you'll go back, you'll heal with your first ability, and then you can try and go back in again to try and go for more trades. So again, Trendemir, I don't think is that good of a champion anyway. I don't think this will change too much, to be honest with him. Maybe just a few little nice quality of life changes. Now, moving into champion nerfs, this is probably one of the biggest nerfs I think I've seen in a very, very long time. Like a very, very long time. Rakan, AP Rakan has been pretty strong. I think Rakan in solo queue definitely has a lot of playmaking potential. And I think Rakan is probably one of the best engaged and one of the best playmaking supports in the game right now. I don't think he warranted this big of a nerf. Like, this nerf is absolutely ridiculous. Base attack damage going down by 6. Obviously doesn't really mean too much to Rakan. Base attack damage, you don't really auto attack too much with Rakan anyway. He's more to do with his abilities. Sometimes you auto attack to try and get an electrocute proc, so you're not going to get as much damage maybe with that. But again, base attack damage doesn't really mean too much at all. It just means that maybe he can't clear the wave as quick as before. You know, again, it's a bit of a weird change, but yeah, what do you do? I don't really mean too much. Now, these next changes are pretty damn big. Grant Engine's cooldown, and as you can see, the early game is pretty much the same, 18 seconds to 18 seconds, and then 16 to 17 seconds. But look at that late game. You're going to be now on a 3-second long cooldown, 3-second longer cooldown on your second ability in the late game. It's going from 12 seconds up to 15 seconds, which is pretty big for Rakan. This means that he can't obviously go in, he can't make as many plays as before. He has to still wait, he has to wait for his cooldowns now to see when's the right time to go in, when's the right time maybe to back off with your second ability. But not only that, they're also reducing the damage with the second ability by a lot. The base damage in the early game, again, not changed too much, but in the later stages, as you can see, the base damage is going down by 15. But also another big thing is the AP ratio is also going down by 15%. Again, as I mentioned, AP Rakan is pretty strong at the moment. You can just go for like Rod of Ages, Death Cap. Imperial Mandate is also pretty good for Rakan, and this is normally very, very strong for him. But like, this big of a nerf is absolutely ridiculous. You know, not only the base damage is going down, but also the AP ratio is going down, which means that it not only hurts his tank builds because the base damage is going down itself, but also it's hurting his AP builds. The cooldown is also getting increased, and not only that, the Battle Dance Shield ability power ratio, so this is the shield on your third ability, is also going down as well. So there's so many nerfs to Rakan. This might actually gut Rakan completely. Okay, maybe that's a bit of an overstatement, because I think Rakan as a champion still has a lot of playmaking potential, and I still think that you can make a lot of plays and win a lot of games with Rakan. But these nerfs are very, very hard. Like, these are hard hitting nerfs for a champion that I don't think was really broken. Like, I think he was S tier. I think he was very strong in competitive. He's also very strong as well, but these are some gutting nerfs. Like, these are some absolutely disgusting nerfs to Rakan. So we'll have to see how that changes things up, maybe in terms of competitive and maybe in terms of solo queue as well. So Zoe, this champion's been absolutely broken for a long amount of time now. Obviously, this is kind of the first patch that we've had for like 3 weeks now. So we've had 3 weeks of pretty much the stale same meta, which Zoe has just been dominating, not only in pro play, but also in solo queue. This champion is absolutely disgusting. The paddle star, the base damage is going down at every single rank. Thank God for that. That ability did way too much damage. And also the increased damage ratio with champion level is also going down by quite a bit, actually. Going down in terms of, it's only going to be 3 to 52 now instead of 6 to 55, depending on champion level. So I still think this ability is going to do a lot of damage. I don't think 5 base damage is going to do a lot. I don't think the little bit of extra damage from the damage ratio in terms of champion level is going to mean too much, but I think this ability definitely warranted a nerf. They nerfed like the second ability before, if I remember correctly, and I was like, cool, you're nerfing the second ability, but what about the first ability? What about a third ability? These are two of the main abilities that are so strong at the moment. The first ability with the damage and the third ability with the cooldown. I really feel like the cooldown of the third ability needs to go up. You can use this ability way too often. You can make way too many plays with this ability, but as you can see, they're not actually nerfing the cooldown of the third ability. They're instead nerfing the base damage and the true damage cap. So these are just going down by 10 at every single rank for both abilities. I don't think this is going to be enough for Zoe. I'll be totally honest with you. I still think Zoe is going to be insanely strong after this patch. I don't think the base damage is enough, as I mentioned. I don't think the increased damage ratio is enough. And I don't think the damage was really the problem with Sleepy Trouble Bubble. I think the main issue with Sleepy Trouble Bubble is the cooldown being so low. Because the cooldown is so low, it means that you can spam this ability over and over again and just get to a stage of the game where it's just basically completely completely impossible to deal with. Just getting hit by Sleepy Trouble Bubble, Sleepy Trouble Bubble, Sleepy Trouble Bubble, and then you can just combo that with your first ability with your ultimate from insane range and just do a stupid amount of damage. That's the crazy thing about Zoe, is that her sieging potential when you're stuck underneath the towers is just so hard to deal with, because she can just keep throwing out abilities without being put under threat, because obviously you're using your ultimate and you're just going to go back to your ultimate pedal star, straight away. So again, Zoe, yeah, this champion is just absolutely disgusting. I'd rather them delete it from the game. But that's never going to happen, is it? Aatrox Darkening Blade cooldown. This is the first ability cooldown, going up a little bit in the later stages of the game, going down by 0.1 seconds in the early game. Don't think this really means too much to Aatrox. I think Aatrox is in a really strong spot at the moment. You're seeing a lot in competitive that he's very contested. In solo queue as well, he's also a very strong champion. Whether you play him in the barrel lane, whether you play him in the jungle, both of these times, he's just insanely strong. I think this champion is absolutely really strong at the moment. Has a lot of playmaking potential, has a lot of healing, has a lot of damage. I mean, Aatrox just kind of has it all, to be honest with you, and is really strong. So again, not really a big change, but changes that I think had to happen. I think you have to nerf Aatrox in one way or another, whether it's the cooldowns, the damage, anything like that. So I have to see if this makes a difference. I don't think this will, but we'll have to see. System item changes. They're changing some of the runes. They're buffing Second Wind and nerfing Bone Plating. Thank God for that, because Bone Plating was broken. Rune stats, so the health regeneration in 5 seconds was 3 plus 2% of your missing health. Now it's 6 plus 2% of your missing health. So it just means that you're just going to be healing up a little bit more. The base healing is going up. The percentage of your missing health is not going up, and the amount of seconds that you have for the health regeneration is not going up. It's just the base. Yeah, the base healing is going up. So I think this is more to try and make Second Wind a more viable option. I mean, I still think it's really good for like tanks in Baron lane, but the problem is that Bone Plating is just so insanely broken at the moment, especially when you come up against champions like, I don't know, Fiora, Darius, Set, even Shen. I could think of so many champions, Akali, Irelia. All these champions have so many combos, have so many ways to just dash in, do a lot of combo damage, and then want to dash out straight away. And that's why Bone Plating is so strong at the moment. Bone Plating is insanely strong. It blocks so much of that damage, and it has such a low cooldown. So I think the Bone Plating being nerfed was definitely warranted. I think that this rune is probably the most broken Resolve Tree rune, if not maybe the most broken rune in the game at the moment. Do I think that 5 damage is going to do a lot? Probably not, because I think that the rune is still insanely strong, and I still think the rune will be used in pretty much every single lane, to be honest with you. You can use it in support, ADC, mid lane, jungle, top lane. You can just use it in any role. Like, this rune is just so strong, you can just use it in any role, and you just block so much damage. Like, it's absolutely crazy. So yeah, Second Wind buff, Bone Plating nerf, trying to make Second Wind a more viable Resolve Tree rune. With nerfing obviously Bone Plating at the same time. We'll have to see how things shape up with that one. Again, I think only Second Wind is viable in a few champions, like maybe Garen and Sep, but other than that, not really too much. Pyke, some interesting changes to Pyke. Obviously, there's a lot of text here, and it's very complicated. I guess you can say, in a way. Basically, the gift of the drowned ones is when you take damage, you restore that little black bar little black health. So with 2 or more enemies nearby, the stored damage ratio used to be 45%, but now it's 50%. So now you're going to be storing more of the damage taken, which is quite nice. However, it does seem like the maximum health, or the maximum damage cap that you get, I think it's, as far as I'm aware, this looks like it's going, the number is going up, but it's really I mean, Pyke changes in general very complicated, especially with his passive, because he has so many numbers, so much text. But it just says the lower number of 60% and 140 plus 8 times your additional attack damage. So I think so it's a lower number, whether it be 60% of your maximum health or 180 plus 8 times your additional attack damage. So even though the number is going up, it means that, I mean, I don't think this really changes too much, because before it was either 60% of your maximum health, which is your damage cap. So your damage cap, so basically the stored bar is going to be 60% of your maximum health, or it's now going to be 140 plus. So I actually think it's a buff overall. I was just thinking, like, I'm trying to think in my head. So 60% of your maximum health, obviously Pyke doesn't really have a lot of maximum health, but they're actually increasing the base amount of the passive. So that means that you can store more damage now if it has more base, like if the base amount is more, because like I said, it's very unlikely that the lower number is going to be 60% of your maximum health, because you don't really build, I mean, yeah, you don't really build that much maximum health. So maybe the low amount is maybe always going to be 60% of your maximum health, but then the base amount is also going up. So actually, no, this actually isn't, oh my God, this is so confusing. Actually, this is enough. Actually, this is enough, I think, because the lower number of 60% of your maximum health, and because you're not building maximum health a lot, most of the time, your lower number is always going to be 60% of your maximum health. Sometimes it was the other one, because it was only 80, like the base amount was only 80. So sometimes that was the lower amount, so you get the base amount instead. But now it's going up to 140. It means that most of the time, you're always going to get like the 60% of your maximum health, which is not going to be a lot, but I don't think this changes means too much. I don't know why I'm thinking so much into this. Pyke is very, very complicated with his passive. If anyone can confirm whether this is a buff or a nerf for like Pyke mains out there, I kind of have a general idea of how Pyke works, but it's so difficult to understand whether this is a buff or a nerf. I think it's a nerf, but I'm not too sure. But anyway, the first part is definitely a buff, because you get more percentage stored now. The third ability, Phantom Undertow, the damage ratio to minions is going down again. It went down from 90% down to 80%. Now it's going down to 50%. So now they're basically cutting it down to where Pyke was before. So Pyke's basically back where he was with his third ability, with only dealing 50% damage to minions. So we got to a stage where devs were like, cool, we want a Pyke mid laner thing. Shit, we over buffed it too much. Let's nerf it down to 80%. Oh, it's still OP, let's nerf it down to where it was before. So it basically made a full circle, and now we're back to square one with Pyke. Obviously, his first ability still does a lot of damage to minions, but with the third ability, we're back to square one. So we basically went full circle with Pyke, which I don't really like. I don't really like that they did that, but hey, I think they could have definitely worked around other changes with Pyke's third ability. Death from below with ally assists, or when an ally kills an enemy champion with the X mark, Pyke gets a percentage of the kill gold. So you get more kill gold with your ultimate. So instead of getting 120% of the gold, you get 140% of the gold. Whoop-de-doo. I don't think there's anything interesting to say about that. Pyke gets more gold with his ultimate. That's basically it. Nasus changes are quite interesting. So Nasus, they're increasing his base AD, which will help him a little bit in the early game. The thing with Nasus is that you never want to trade in the early game anyway. Like the main thing when playing Nasus, especially with his base AD, this is obviously a buff to Baron lane Nasus. You don't really want to do too much in the early game. You can't trade against any of the other Baron lane champions. The only thing you can do is just farm. You just farm as much as possible with your first ability. You try and stack your first ability as much as possible. And when you get to a stage of the game where your first ability does enough damage, then you can group with your team. This base attack damage, I don't think is going to mean too much. The base damage on the first ability as well, it helps a little bit. Again, I don't think it'll mean too much. I think it will help a lot in the later stages of the game. It will help you trade a little bit better. Like say if Fiora's trying to jump onto you, you can kind of trade a little bit back and trying to auto attack a few times because your base attack damage is going up and also your first ability is going up. Again, you never really want to use your first ability on an enemy champion anyway, unless there is no minions nearby, because you always want to try and save the first ability to try and last hit the minions in the lane. Then the ultimate, the base armor, the armor magic resist that you get from your ultimate is getting a big buff in the early game. So in the level, at level 1, it's getting a big buff. At level 2, it's staying the same, but at level 3, it's getting a bit of a nerf. So kind of hurting the scaling of Nasus in a way, but giving him a lot of early game power with his ultimate, giving him an extra 15 armor and 15 magic resist. So that on top of Twin Guard could be very strong for Nasus, because you're getting a lot of armor and magic resist with your ultimate, and then you're also going to be increasing the armor and magic resist with the Twin Guard. So I think that's going to be insanely strong. Dr. Mundo, some changes as well. Last changes for this patch preview, or first look, you could say. The passive, basically all they're doing with the passive is they're making it so when Dr. Mundo gets hit with an immobilizing ability, he doesn't lose that much percentage health anymore. But to compensate that, you're not getting as much health when you pick up the chemical canister. So again, it's kind of noob proofing Dr. Mundo in a way, because before you would lose a lot of HP when getting hit by an immobilizing ability when you have your passive up and available. You know, with Dr. Mundo's passive, when you get hit by a CC effect, you don't actually get immobilized, you just lose a percentage of your health instead. Before that was 7%, so it actually felt good to go and pick up the canister, because you would then get 8% of your missing health. So again, it had a bit of skill in a way, because especially against Dr. Mundo, is you had to try and basically stop the you had to stop the canister from being picked up if you're on the enemy team or if you're against Dr. Mundo. But now it doesn't really mean too much, because you're not losing as much health and you're not gaining as much health from the chemical canister. So again, basically noob proofing Dr. Mundo in a way, where it's like, oh cool, you only lose 3%, you only gain 4% for picking up the canister now, so it actually doesn't mean that much big of a difference. It's like you're going to be losing less health when you get immobilized, but you're also going to be gaining less health from the canister. So yeah, I don't really know what I think about that. Again, I think it's like noob proofing Dr. Mundo in a way, because it doesn't really feel like you need to pick up the canister anymore. Anyways, then the ultimate, the maximum dosage health gains. This is basically now with Dr. Mundo, it's now going to give more power when you first activate the ability, and less power when the ability carries on. So as you can see, the health gain, so this is when you activate the ability straight away. Before it was 15, 20, and 25% of your missing health. So you always wanted to use Dr. Mundo's ultimate when you was low on health. Now it's 25, 30, and 35% missing health. So you're getting a huge burst of missing health straight away, like right from the start. You're going to get a huge burst of health gained right at the start. But as you can see, the maximum health regeneration over time has been nerfed by 5% at every single rank. So overall, it's actually a buff to the ultimate, because you're getting more percentage anyway from your missing health. You're getting 10% every single time, and you're only losing 5% of your health regeneration. So I think overall this is a buff to the ultimate, and I think overall this is a buff to Dr. Mundo, even though it's adjustments. It is adjustments because they're nerfing some of the ability and they're buffing it at the same time. But I think the buffs are way more beneficial than the nerfs to Dr. Mundo. So I think that is very interesting. But yeah, that is pretty much everything, to be fair. That is pretty much everything with these changes. I think the changes are going to be very interesting, especially the Rakan nerf, the Zoe nerf as well. I think we'll have to see how things shape up as we get into the patch, which is going to be sometime next week, normally around Thursday, Wednesday or Thursday next week, depending on your time zone. But as always, hopefully you enjoyed this first look, or this little preview of patch 4.1b. I will be doing a YouTube shorts of the official patch notes when they get released next week, so make sure you stay tuned for that. And as always, take care, and I'll see you in the next wild video. Peace.